Man, so this is a tough one to talk about, but I had to talk about it because it has been one of the best reading experiences that I've ever had. So I wanted to kind of throw some thoughts out there to you, and apologies beforehand if it sounds a little convoluted. I just find, for me, there are others more adept at this, it's almost impossible for me to really delve into the beauty and originality, and ironically also the incredible elusiveness contained in this novel. This novel is by the Romanian writer, and I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, so I do apologize, Mircea Cartarescu, and it is called Solenoid. It's translated by Sean Cotter, and man, Sean Cotter, this translation is incredible. The vivid language, the imagery is just gorgeous and dark and nightmarish and metaphysical, and it's what I've found hard in talking about Solenoid is there are so many anchor points. You have to find an anchor point if you're going to in any way kind of discuss the different nodes of either plot or purpose or ideas. It's just an explosion of various ideas, various concepts, and you really need to choose kind of an anchor point as an entryway to even discuss in the novel. And the novel itself is represented as a journal. I won't even say journal or diary. It is a project, a piece of writing by this unnamed narrator who is a teacher at the end of a town in nowhere, or Bucharest, but I believe. And this tragic town, and at the end of which, where he teaches in a school, a high school, and where he lives at the end of a street in a constantly shifting house with 1,000 rooms, or one room, or in a tower with a dental chair in the middle of this tower with a window where you can see possibly elephants, possibly mites, possibly an entirely new type of species destroying itself in another world. That is just 1.00001% of what even is going on here in this novel. That's why it's, for me, I found an impossibility to discuss this in a way that I think is satisfying, and hopefully you will find satisfying in my discussion, something that'll spur you to go pick up this book, because it is, again, without a doubt, one of the best books I've ever read. But also, in the novel itself, the narrator is discussing, there's a major part of the novel, or major idea behind it, where there are different major points in your life where things might branch off, that the other you became completely different because it went another way at this moment. There might be other yous out there in other dimensions that maybe I'm wearing a green shirt today instead of a blue shirt. But then there are other more major events that you have become a completely different person because of this. So there's a point in the narrators, in the novel, particularly a discussion of a poem this narrator wrote that was not well received when he was in college, and therefore he stopped all of literature and went this way. Meanwhile, there might be the other narrator, which might very well be the one we're reading here in this universe, becomes a famous, perhaps became a famous writer, he speculates, right? But he branched that way, and that was a major kind of turning point. And then he talks about a novel that he read when he was a kid. These different nodes, these different points of branching off possibly in your life where you say, this was a big moment where if it had gone the other way or this way, that I would have been a different person. And I think the reading of this novel, no matter, I mean, I'm older now, but the reading of this novel for me today, absolutely, I could say is a point where if I had not read this novel, thoughts about my own writing and about what I'm trying to do with the project I'm working on now, that would have never existed. It has changed the way I'm writing. It has changed the way I will view things from here on out too. And it's also been augmented. This novel augments my understanding of my favorite writer, Franz Kafka. Okay, so the novel itself is very much indebted to Kafka. Kafka's diaries, the narrator reads and rereads Kafka's diaries. Kafka is written about as the master of dreams in here, as a master writer of the dreamlike state, as the master of, I'm going to turn this off because it's bugging me, which another thing, these little jellyfish here in this container, so perfect for this book, because there are some scenes in here in aquarium-like rooms with creatures sliding along the wall, and just incredible kind of stuff. So I thought about that, not intentionally, but perfect for this novel. So anyway, but the Kafkaesque aspect of it, the fact that Kafka is such a prevalent part of this, so many authors in that vein, what he calls the great authors of loneliness. But when it comes to this project of the novel as really what he calls an anti-book, what the narrator does, his project, thanks to this moment where he branched off and did not go into literature, he is now creating this wonderful piece of literature, but nobody's going to read it, right? We're not supposed to be reading this. This is all for himself, for not even for himself, right? This is a project and a piece that's going to become ash, like Kafka asking to burn all his writings, right? Or Kafka's diaries, which were somewhere in between biography and fiction and literature and art. These kinds of fragmentary, blindingly pure creations that could never be published, because when you begin to publish, when you begin to write for an audience, you begin to create this facade. The whole thing is that we're not supposed to be reading this, but there's a gift there in the fact that we're just writing for ourselves, and we're writing to contemplate and understand the key to the different universes which we might exist in, and can we ever get beyond this 3 dimensions that we live in? We can never see that 4th dimension, but maybe every now and then there's a glimpse of some truth. And so that's, again, a tiny part of this incredible novel, and I won't continue to unravel in my attempts at describing what goes on in this novel. I will say I will read some things that I've written just to kind of point you in a direction of thought, because I do think you can take, again, you can discuss, again, the allusions to writers in here, the allusions to different aspects of thought, philosophy, metaphysics, time, space, geometry. That can be its own kind of project to discuss different parts of the novel in that way. I don't want you to feel like this novel doesn't cohere, and there is a structure, however loose. There is a structure to different things, and it's not going to answer things completely, right? There are just keys and little breadcrumbs and different things left in there, but there's a beauty in that open space. And I do believe it's a satisfying conclusion to it all. But again, it's so open for a return, an infinite return, which is much of the novel, an infinite return to this, to discover more and more, again, anchors to discuss. So some of the things I did just right when I was reading and saying, this is so much going on, being overwhelmed here, I'm going to break this down into some different aspects that I see that might be anchors to hold us to some major themes and ideas. For one, the distortion of time and space, the way illness is written about. The narrator here, when he was a boy, he had tuberculosis, similar to Kafka. And Kafka got that when he was a little older and sent off to a tubercular center. And there is this kind of mini memoirish aspect to it. I will mention here that a lot of the blurbs, and even online, will mention Nosgard, what my struggle, that you guys know. If you don't, you'll get it. The auto-fiction, that to me is a misnomer. Like that to me, if I read that, I'm not big on auto-fiction or that kind of, I appreciate what people have done in that mode of writing, Nosgard and all that. That's just not my cup of tea. And if I were to look at some of these blurbs, I might be averse to picking this up, but it is not in any way, minimally, is it anything like that autofiction. It is a world of dreams and nightmares and metaphysical contemplation, so far removed, to my mind, to the kind of, let's talk about how I used to fold my socks when I was 12, kind of autofictional modes. I know there are various modes, but that kind of thing. If I were to look and say autofiction, no, I don't want to read that. This is so wildly, every moment of this bends the reality that you think the narrator's in and that you yourself might think you're in. So there's a constant discussion of distortion of time and space, and large and small, and the kind of, are we inside, right, the vein of a cockroach in another dimension, and this is our world? That kind of perception, in and out, or are we the gods of mites, and are these mites gods of other mites? This endless progression. So anyway, there's discussion of books and texts of loneliness. Loneliness is just such a major part of this and the narrator's project. There's a discussion of, unseen dimensions, as I spoke about. Could there be a thin membrane between us and another dimension out there? Dreams and reality versus reality, or the reality of dreams, and the conflation and bending of that perspective, and purpose. Do we have a purpose in life? Is the project itself of writing this, is that a person's purpose? Is that the narrator's purpose? Memories manifesting in the present. So one of my anchor points throughout was that my interpretation of some of this was, without a doubt, the narrator's past and memories and dreams now find themselves manifested in some way in this world that he now walks when he's going to school, back to school, to home. And maybe it's a dentist chair that we remember from his childhood. It's appearing here in the present, what we consider the present day of his writing. So things like that, and that's why the Kafka, I don't overuse the word Kafka-esque because it gets misinterpreted so much, but the parts of Kafka that I see of what's in your mind, yeah, that's cool to talk about, but Kafka takes them and places them in the real world. They become in the fictive world that is the narrator's reality. And I find that's what's happening here, and how I see it. So many dreams, memories, they become active realities for the people in this novel. And that's one way to think about it, from how it not, oh, everything's a dream. That's not what you're going for here, because the dreams very much can be reality, and the reality of these dreams and their manifestations in the world of the narrator. I talked about the first kind of text to move us. What is that? How does that shift our understanding of literature and life and writing and what we want to pursue? There's a constant going inward, a tunneling, images of tunnels, images of throats, images of wombs, right? Inward and external. There's a constant digging and tunneling toward a hopeful either inner truth or outer dimension that we can't see, where we keep on continuing to search for that truth. The instability of our false perceptions, what we choose to believe is real. And then there's that whole idea of transcendence beyond literature into pure experience. That's kind of what what we're reading, right? This is just pure experience. As I'm not a writer. You keep saying, I'm not a writer. This is pure experience. This is what the anti-book is. And it's just coming and flowing through me. And never meant for anyone's eyes. This is to be destroyed. I wrote about the infinite and the oblivion and oblivion, which are two sides of the same coin to me. But I think so much about this is about the infinite progression. I was reading Kafka talking about, he was looking at a story, looking at somebody sitting at a table who it felt like they were being choked, and then this person on the outside of him felt like they were choking him. Anyway, this infinite progression of loops, and constantly, whether it be mother being born of mother, there's a constant infinite deferment of not only meaning but of life, and then also there's oblivion and there's nothingness. And is that just the total compression of the infinite? Those are kind of discussions that he has. There are different parts of the novel that deal with, again, the metaphysical, but deal with the conception of time and the conflation of time and space, and the idea that, I'm not going to give everything away, but let's say you happen to be a little mite, how time goes by so much more slowly, maybe years, where with us it would just be a few minutes, and we might be the blink of some God's eye, right? And that's that kind of concept, and that kind of thing. But ultimately, too, and I'll finish up because I've written all this, but I realize too that it really just comes down to recognizing, beyond all the metaphysical, beyond all the concepts of conflation of time and space, the distortion of scale, and the infinite regression and infinite progression and loops of time, and trying to find a purpose. It's also a very tender discussion of familial relations and mother and son and family, and to say it, and there's love, connection, in to a tiny degree, and that's, I'm not going to give anything away, spoilers at all. Like, I hope this if anything confused you more, but there are these things that are redemptive within the novel, and it is dark, it is nightmarish, it is fascinatingly bleak at times and grotesque, but there's also that worrying. Again, part of Kafka is all these things around you, whether it be you've turned into a giant bug, you have been arrested for not doing anything, right? You are watching this torture chamber that writes a sentence on the criminal's body, and all these things. And then what's fascinating about Kafka is the redemptive quality there. It's kind of and so you go on. Joseph K. continues to go through and try to go against try to find a way to resolve his guilt. You know, Gregor Samsa wakes up and continues to try to get to work. Now, these might not be, you know, the best examples of pursuing a passion or anything of that nature, but there is that absurd thrill, both in here and of course in Kafka, of the fascinating detail of the absurdity of life. And the only way to really do that is with jerking you out of some kind of placid, realistic mode of writing and thought. And I don't even like applying surreal, even though, I mean, it is a surreal novel. But I think that also, if I look at the word surreal when it comes to art, I also think of a disconnection between reality and whatever they're going for. I think it's this very much bound up almost in a real truth that life is absurd, and this is what's so satisfying, is when it's portrayed in such a real way. And by that I mean the experience of it. You know, the experience of finding something hidden in a basement is the same as if you just found a creature in an aquarium staring at you, right? These kinds of experiences and the way that is portrayed, that is so important to really the reality, the truth of what's great about art. So all that to say, this contains everything you could hope for, to me, in a piece of literature and a piece of art. And you should certainly, if you can find it, which should be easy to find. This was just at Barnes & Noble, no big deal. I didn't think they'd have it. But yeah, just an incredible piece of literature. And if you do pick it up, you do read it, you do have questions about it, I'd love to talk to anyone about it. I'm actively, a friend of mine at work, who turned me on to this book, he's fascinated by Romanian literature. He told me about this, and I said, I don't know, I'll check it out. And I fell in love with it. So I'd love to discuss more with someone about what they thought about the novel, because it is, again, one of the most mind-melting and thoughtful and beautiful experiences I've had with a book. So hope you enjoyed the video, and please let me know your thoughts. Take care.